The Skyline. It's been a little while, so we're gonna do a quick little recap. Last year, in January 2024, I bought a Skyline that had been stolen from its previous owner for $10,000. I had been wanting one of these cars since I was a kid, watching Noriara's beer can Skyline content, and finally pulled the trigger on this one. Yeah, it didn't look the best, but it was all I could afford. Fast forward a few months, we put a new motor in as the old one had a fist-sized hole through the side of the block. Oh my god, bro, that's a freaking con rod. I then got it painted and then it looked like this. But I still wasn't happy with how the car performed. So I then thought it would be a great idea to RB25 swap the Skyline, and this is where the problems began. A few months passed and I found this RB25 Neo for $3,000, which was exceptionally cheap, but when I pulled it apart, it was a disaster. That's not good. Don't know what's going on here, but it's pretty gluggy. There was oil mixed with the coolant, the head gasket had probably blown, and the bearings didn't look that good too. So I rebuilt the entire engine with fresh new parts, a forged bottom end, and spent thousands doing so. At this point, I was now finally ready to swap the newly freshly built RB25 in, so I pulled out the old RB20, and that's you guys up to speed. What do you think about the RB20?
Oh, a junk. Chuck in the bin.
Oh, so you like the 25?
Straight in 25 all day.
And now the Skyline looks like this. It's been a little while, guys, I know. Let me explain. Where do I begin? We're gonna start off this explanation from the very start of this year when we signed our lease for our new warehouse. Getting this warehouse has been always the absolute dream goal, and we finally have it. Me, Nathan, and Lachlan finally have our dream space with hoists. This warehouse has been a massive step forward in the direction of growing the channel and the business to expand. And obviously this is something you gotta think about when starting YouTube. You need to be constantly making bigger and better content, and that's what we're attempting to do with this warehouse. Now, what has this got to do with the Skyline? Well, let me explain. So I started building this car before we had the overheads of the warehouse. This is something that I was putting basically all my time, money, and effort into without even knowing that I was going to be signing a lease to a warehouse very soon. And with upgrading the warehouse with hoists, fitting up lighting, and basically trying to make that place a really efficient workspace, it has meant that we've had to pull some time, money, effort away from this Skyline, which has kind of sucked. Sometimes you need to make sacrifices and the right choices in order to grow, and that has been exactly what this warehouse has been for me. And quite honestly, I haven't been able to finish this build comfortably. This is me being very transparent with you guys, but because of course I was doing all this work before we signed the lease of the warehouse, I was pretty much dumping every single dollar that I had made into this RB25 build. Being a forged bottom end, having a manifold turbo, we've got an ECU for this thing, which I haven't even shown you guys yet, as well as trying to grow our new space. It has taken a massive hit, and that's why there hasn't been any Skyline content. We've had to focus on smaller builds like the BMW, of course, and that Lancer that I'm building with Mike, but it's okay because we signed that lease in December, and guess what? It's now June, which means that everything is falling into place. I'm finally recovering. But we're gonna start finishing off this Skyline build, which has always been the plan. It's always been the plan to put this thing on the back burner until now, after signing that lease for the shop, and it's gonna be crazy, I promise. We're back, boys. And I feel bad too because every single video that I've uploaded for the past 6 months, you guys have been asking whereabouts is the Skyline, and it's always been at home at the garage. I just haven't been able to finish it because a lot's going on, and it's time. It's time to finish off the Skyline, baby. Before we continue, I want to talk about the sponsor for today's video. As you guys are aware, my daily driver right now is this BMW 335i, and it has a lot of problems that can potentially happen if you do not look after the car. And if you don't have special equipment, it's very hard to diagnose issues. And that's where Carly comes in. Carly is an OBD2 scanner that allows you to scan your car in order to diagnose problems so that you, of course, can fix them. This is very important on European cars because they're very complicated complicated. They're filled with computers, and I'll show you how this thing works. So you want to find and locate your OBD2 port, which is just here in the BMW. You just click that in place. The lights will go on. So now we're going to click on the Carly application. We're going to click connect. It's going to connect to the car. And once you're in, you can read engine codes and do a bunch of other little things. You can see here, I've got a few problems with my BMW that need attention. Looks like we've got some water pump issues, which is not ideal, but we'll get to those eventually. So not only can Carly help you diagnose issues on your car, Carly can also help program little features that your car hadn't come with from factory. So for example, on this 335i, I don't have a digital speed reading, but Carly should enable me to do that. So we're going to go here, dashboard instrument cluster. You can customize all of this, even deciding when your tank warning light comes on. So we're going to put the digital speedometer on. So check this out, guys. We're driving the BMW now, and look at this. We have a digital speedometer. We're going 45 k's an hour, and we've got that digital speeding right there. Now we're slowing down. That is pretty cool. There's a whole bunch of other little features that you can use this thing for. Obviously, you know, you can code your car, delete error codes, and yeah, this thing's very handy to have, and I keep this actually in my center console in case I have any problems. Massive shout out to Carly for sponsoring today's video. Carly has been a massive helper of the channel just with this little tool. And if you want to grab this for yourself, there's going to be a discount code in the description below. Anyway, let's get back to today's video. The Skyline hasn't had an engine in it for the past 4 months. It's been that long, I know, but it's time to get back on my own 2 feet and finish this job once and for all, so let's get started. All right, let me give you an update on everything that's gone on so far behind the scenes, because I've been chipping away at some stuff behind the scenes off the camera in order to get this done as soon as possible. And we're gonna start off with the engine. Look at this beautiful thing. Oh my God. So the other day I installed this R35 coil pack conversion kit from Raceworks. Look how beautiful this thing is. Oofed. Raceworks, baby. Now the reason for doing this is because the spark on these RB25 coil packs, which are just over here, the spark on these Spitfire coil packs are not good enough for the power that we want to run. So we've gone ahead and installed these R35 Itachi coil packs, and these are definitely going to be enough. Little things in the engine bay, we've installed this little clip that holds the hard lines together, and we got that from Tristan, Turbo Tristan, shout out to him.
I'll have to grind. Need some of that Diddy lube.
These are actually genuine OEM Nissan clips. Don't know how hard these are to find, but Tristan had these laying around, so look at that, mate. Looks pretty good. Other than that, you guys already know that we completely repainted the engine bay. It looked like this, and now it looks like this. Look at the transformation. But today, we're gonna be focusing on getting this engine in the car for the very first time. So let's get to work. So because the focus is to get this engine into the car for the first time in this video, we need to prep the engine bay so that we don't have to pull the engine back out again. So the first thing that I did was start pulling the body loom through this little hole on the driver's side of the engine bay. I had to, of course, take all of this out when painting the bay because I wanted to make sure I got absolutely everywhere. I had to take a little bit more time than usual because I hadn't pulled this out since 4 months ago. So I had to tap back into my memory and sort of try figure out exactly where it all went. But cars are like adult Lego. You sort of can just figure it out by looking at it, but my memory came in and saved the day. I figured it all out. Just installed all the wiring. Everything looks pretty good now. It's all in its little spots, like it all sort of just goes back in one place. The clips only go in one spot. There's a clip there, there's a clip just there, and it goes all the way along here to this, and then that splits off and goes to the fuse box right there, which is now mounted. I just need to get another cover because the cover that I've got is broken. The next thing I'm gonna do is do all the fuel stuff. So I want to sort of mount this flex fuel sensor that I've got. We're actually using a Haltech with this car. The car is gonna be ran entirely on a Haltech Nexus 3 ECU, which is pretty cool. And this flex fuel sensor I'm thinking of mounting just like that or something like that. Shout out to my boys at Raceworks. We're gonna be putting this thing just about there or so. So I need to drill a hole into this bracket right there and then go from there. So here I am, 10 p.m. at night time, drilling holes into my freshly painted R32. I wanted to do a really clean install and make sure everything was unboltable. So we're drilling holes to then put riv nuts in so we can unbolt the flex fuel sensor whenever we want. Riv nuts are super handy. They allow you to put threads where they didn't exist, and it means that we can mount everything nice and clean. I've gone to a lot of effort on the engine, so the engine bay has to reflect that too. Haltech sensor now installed. Look at how fresh that is, guys. I drilled, riv nutted in a riv nut and then installed the Haltech sensor. So pretty good spot. Let's mount the fuel pressure reg. There was already existing holes for the standard fuel line brackets, so we used those to mount the fuel pressure regulator. I just had to clean out the threads because I of course had painted over them. Everything's looking nice and neat. The fuel pressure regulator's in. I'm pretty happy. We've got the fuel pressure regulator now installed in its final location. So just to give you guys a little bit of a rundown on how we're going to be running the fuel system, we're going to be having the fuel come in from there. That's going to go to the filter, then to the back of the rail. Then the rail should sit around here. Then we'll have a line that goes from the fuel rail to the fuel pressure regulator on either side, one of these sides, and then down to the flex fuel sensor, then back to the return. So just to make it easy for you guys to understand, I drew up a diagram on paint. Pretty simplistic, but we've got the fuel in that goes to the fuel filter, then to the back of the rail, then the fuel goes to the rail, then back out to the fuel pressure regulator, then to the flex fuel sensor, the Haltech flex fuel sensor, and then out to the return line. We still don't have a fuel filter, but we'll sort that out another time. I remember when I installed the flex fuel sensor on my Chaser, I was confused to why you would put the sensor on the return, and apparently it's actually better to have on the return according to ChatGPT. So it works on the Chaser totally fine, and I'm sure it's going to work on this setup, but we got the sensor that's going to go to the return and after the fuel pressure regulator. So I think it's that line back there that we got to convert to a -6. So we're gonna do that. Now I want this to look clean, so I'm converting the hard lines to -6 fittings. We're using, of course, Raceworks fittings on this entire build, and I've got these hardline adapters, which convert your hard lines into -6 fittings. Pretty sick. Next day now, we've mounted everything for the fuel system. All we need to do now is make the lines, and you can see that I've already started putting -6 fittings on the factory lines. These fittings make life so much easier because I can just adapt the line to a -6 fitting. Also went ahead and painted these little covers right here, which just go in the corner. They were originally white. As you can see, there's a little bit of white paint left. Little details like this make a huge difference. You can see we painted the one here where the loom goes through. It's nice and black. It doesn't look all old and crusty, so it's the details that count, guys. One thing that sort of stopped me in my track of finishing this build was the hydraulic line system for the hikers. If you didn't know this, R32s came out with rear wheel steering, pretty advanced for the time. However, they're very complicated underneath the engine bay, and the system's not that good for high horsepower applications, so we're gonna delete it. So I've decided that I'm going to just loop the hydraulic lines going to the hikers at the rear of the car. So you can see these are the two lines right here, and these just go back to the hikers, which you can see I've disconnected everything. There's like a little hikers pump that sits exactly where that sensor goes. I'm going to put the motor in and do this another time because eventually we'll be bringing it around this car to the shop. So I'll have a hoist, so I'll be able to, you know, quickly do that underneath the car. But we've bolted up all the power steering lines. I reckon it's time to put the motor in. Got the engine crane set up. Let's put this motor in. Now I did some digging online because I wanted to make sure that I was able to put this engine in without scratching any of the valve covers, as well as be able to pull the engine out as easy as possible every time that I need to. Shout out to this website, alariatech.com. They do these like zinc coated engine hoist mounts. Very, very handy because they're like much taller than the factory ones. You can see I've got one here and one on the other side too. And it basically just means that we can lift this engine from a much higher point so we don't scratch up anything. So that is gonna help us quite a lot. Let's put this engine in, I guess. So it was finally time to install this fully forged RB25 DET Neo into the R32. Unfortunately, none of the boys were around to help me, so I had to do this all by myself. This was going to be a bit of a struggle because we freshly painted the engine bay and I didn't want to scratch anything. So I had to be very careful, obviously not trying to scratch the engine and the engine bay, but it was all happening. This is it, guys. We're finally installing the engine. God, it looks good. It was definitely a struggle moving this crane around by myself, and very sketchy because the garage door isn't that tall, so the engine crane almost hits it when it's at maximum height. But here we go. Let's do this. got the engine in myself and look at this, guys. Look at that. Oh my goodness, it looks good. This is months in the making and it's finally in. The Skyline has a heart now. I might need to pull the engine again. I'm not too sure because there's a lot of other stuff that we need to fit up, but for now it is looking spicy. We've got to mount the fuel pressure regulator lines. I've got a bunch of fittings. As you can see, I've been going through all my Raceworks parts. And we of course also have a big catch can for this thing because RBs like to breathe. I just don't know where I'm going to install this because it's so damn big. I was thinking down in the corner, somewhere around there, but this is huge, so it's probably not gonna fit. Man, this thing looks so good. Oh man. I also found out that the power steering pump, I won't be able to use the standard one, or I'll have to make a custom bracket for it because it's sort of in the way. It doesn't bolt in its factory spot because of this huge as G30 turbo. Anyway, we're going to get to installing the fittings on the fuel pressure regulator, and I reckon this is one of the hardest parts about doing builds like this, wrapping your head around the fittings. Luckily, there's a lot of information online on where everything's supposed to go. Raceworks has a lot of information on what fittings go where, but you still have to draw up a diagram to sort of map out everything, and there is going to be a little bit of trial and error too. We're putting a 90-degree fitting on the fuel pressure regulator inline, and then a straight fitting down. We'll actually get to making these lines in a later video, but that's the fuel pressure regulator done. So I've got the fuel pressure regulator all installed, got the gauge on there as well, but I have to take this off because I have to remove the manifold, but we've got a 90-degree fitting which will go to here, the fuel pressure rail return, and then we've got a straight fitting that'll go down to the sensor and then all the way down to the back of the tank. We've also got a 90-degree fitting on the back for the inline, but that is going to be a bit of a problem because we need to install some sort of fuel filter before the feed line, which is going to be a bit tricky because there's not actually that much room. But I've got to also remove this intake manifold because they're not made that well, and considering the price, that does make sense. The surface that they come with is not entirely flat because of how it's manufactured. I've heard this issue with a lot of the cheap manifolds. Oh, this surface needs to be machined down, so we're gonna have to get that machined. So this is what I'm talking about, the surface of the head. The manifold needs to be entirely flat. I have actually put something flat up against this surface, and you could kind of tell that it's like slightly warped. So the machine shop should hopefully be able to fix that up without hopefully scratching the entire manifold. But check how much room we have now in order to work on everything that's underneath the intake manifold. Heaps of space. I've got to do a lot of stuff like connect up the head drain, which is just at the back over there, goes all the way down to that fitting right there. And I need to figure out where I'm going to mount the oil filter relocation kit. That is going to be a bit tricky. We've got the intake manifold loaded up in the BMW. A little update on this thing. Thing's running pretty damn good. Very happy with it. So I dropped off the intake manifold to the machine shop and then headed back home. So we're back from the machine shop. It's actually been a day or two and I've been getting photos from the machine shop. I use this machine shop. They're local to me, head to head. They're based in Clayton. They've done all my work in the past. The machinist has sent me some photos and it turns out that that manifold was 1.5 millimeters out. So it was not only bowed, it was also twisted. So he went and machined everything down nice and flat. The surface looks awesome and we should be getting that back in a couple days. Now it might be a bit confusing to why I'm working on this car here and not at the shop, and that's because I want to do as much as I possibly can here while it's in the garage with all my tools before I take it to the shop and do all the fabrication. I've decided as well I might just install the gearbox here, just on the ground, just for the nostalgia. That'll make transporting everything easier because the engine won't be just sort of like floating in place. And it's actually not that hard to do. I just want to show you some of the goodies that we got for this R32 Skyline. ENQUIRES have jumped on board in order to get the power down to the wheels. Got a hectic twin plate clutch that's going to go on this thing. Got a lot of brands to mention. There's a lot of people helping this build out and I need to get on to actually finishing this car. I've got tools scattered between the shop and home, so it's a little bit difficult to do everything at the moment. So I'm going to slowly move everything back here and then finish this off and then move everything back, which is a bit of a pain. I wanted to do the fuel wiring, but I've got all my electronic stuff at the shop, so need to go to the shop and get all that stuff. Looking like a bit of a bomb went off in here. A lot of the stuff that we do from here on now is just gonna be small, tedious stuff, but I'll try to smash it all out so we don't have just videos where there's only a few things going on. But the R32 Skyline is back in full swing. I'm gonna try to smash out as many videos as I can on this thing over the next couple of weeks and try to get this thing started. But thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a thumbs up. I'll see you all in the next one. Catch ya.